Hey guys, Bill from BlenderBrit here. Today we're going to be making this boiling flask. It's the first tutorial in a series I'm going to do based off this project I did recently. I've decided to do some more trimmed down tutorials focusing on single element rather than full scenes, mainly due to my job limiting the amount of time I get to spend doing this. But yeah, let's get started. Right, so nice new scene in Blender. I do have a few things sitting over here on layer 10. It's a basic sort of lighting setup. I set up with Pro Lighting Skies and a floor and whatnot, just so we don't have to concentrate on that side of things. But yeah, let's start this by creating a UV sphere. We'll keep in the default settings of 32 segments and 16 rings because that actually works pretty well for us. I'm then going to press number pad 1 to jump into front view, and for now number pad 5 to go to orthographic mode. Then let's tab into edit mode, and we're going to, in fact now I'm going to stay in object mode for a sec and scale this down a bit, 0.4, because we're going to make this roughly 40 centimeters high. In fact, it's going to have its neck, isn't it? So let's make it 0.3 for now. And then I'm going to press Control A and apply that scale because I've been adjusting it here. Right, now we tab into edit mode. I'm going to press G and grab it up the Z axis to about there. Yeah, that's what we want. And I'm going to press Z to tab to go into wireframe mode. And then I'm going to use the box select tool by pressing B and delete these 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, and then X to delete vertices. Awesome. Now I'm going to box select the bottom ring like so, hit extrude, hit scale, which is S, and then 0, which will bring it all into the center. I'm then going to press Control R and add in some loops. You can adjust the amount of loops with the old mouse wheel there. There we go. I'm adding in the extra geometry here just so when we add in a subsurf modifier it will be more evenly distributed, for lack of a better term. Right, then I'm going to press A to stop selecting stuff. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? And then B, and we'll box select these top ones here. In fact, what I'm going to do, because if I use this one, the neck will be too thin and it'll be too fat if I use that one. So I'm going to add in a new loop cut with Control R, place that there, and then I can delete those vertices, and it will extrude those ones up. There we go to about there. Add in a few more loops, and then I'm going to change the is it the pivot point? Yeah, to the 3D cursor, which is still at the center. So then when I scale this up to be our 40 centimeters or whatever it is, it will scale from there. Awesome, so we have our basic sort of shape now, and if I bring in the lighting scene, because obviously I set it up for these dimensions, it's perfect and ready to go. We do have a few things to do before we do anything interesting though. We need to go to smooth shading, add in a subsurf modifier. Level 2 should be plenty really. Yeah, that's good to me. We also need to, while I think of it, grab that middle vertice there and hit Alt M and merge it at the center. So that's now, instead of being lots of vertices in the same place, it's just one. There we go. Okay, next up, another modifier, this time a solidify, which will give it some thickness like so. Awesome. Now I need to put this at the top because we're going to apply it, and whenever you apply a modifier it really needs to be at the top. So that takes away from our nice sharp. You'll notice here if I move it down again, it gave us kind of a especially if I do an edge split, gave us a nice sharp edge, whereas if the solidifier is at the top it then subdivides that thick edge, making it smooth, but we don't want that. So let's fix it. If I mark this as sharp, yeah, just increase it. There we go. Job done. So if you've not done this before, sorry, I kind of rushed through that, didn't I? What a crease does is affect the subsurf modifier. So if I've now just highlighted this bottom of the neck loop there. If I play with the crease slowly, you'll see what it's doing. It's pulling in the vertices. In fact, if I go into wireframe mode, you'll be able to see it even closer. You see how it's pulling them in closer to the guideline of the unsubdivided object. That's pretty much what that does. And we actually do need a slight crease on there. So let's just do that, and that should look pretty good, which it does. It is, however, a little thick, I think. So let's change this to 0.05. Maybe 0.065. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. So that's our flask shape good to go. Now, as I said, we're going to apply the solidify modifier, like so. We'll leave the subsurf and the edge split as is. We don't need to touch that. But now if we tab into edit mode, you'll see it's applied it, and we can control the geometry from there, which is all what we want. So the reason we did that is because I'm going to be applying different textures to the outside of the glass as to the inside of the glass. That's terrible English, but I'm sure you get what I mean. And the only way to do that really is to apply it and use different materials. So select this inner part of the ridge, lip, whatever, top. We want this inner bit here, and we're going to hit Control L. No, we're not. Oh, L. Shift L. No. What am I doing? Nah, Control E, sorry, and then mark seam. Like so. And now if I go to face mode and hit L there, you'll see it's just selecting, because we marked a seam, a UV seam around that center loop. When I hit L on one of the faces on the inside, it just selects the faces on the inside. Same if I hit L on one of the faces on the outside, it will just select the outside. And since we have that done at the moment, I'm going to hit H to hide them. So we're just looking at the interior faces now. And I'm going to grab these 2, 3 loops, hit Shift D, scale them in a little, move it up the Z-axis just a tad, and then I'm going to hit P and separate by selection, giving us what will be our liquid. But for now I'm going to move that to layer 2 and forget about it. I just wanted to do it while we were there. So let's hit Alt H and hide all of that, and then do what we came here to do, which was the separate materials. So let's hit New, and we'll call this boiling flask glass. Okay, and then we'll create a separate one, which for now we're actually going to use the same material because we'll develop them and then separate them later. But I want the different areas of the model to be using these different layers of materials. So the inner one, we'll use the second one. So let's select that, hit assign, and now if I select this second material, it's using the interior. And if I select the top one, it's using the exterior. And that's what we wanted. Okay. Finally, we can get some of the get to the fun stuff in the material nodes. So I'm going to delete the diffuse shader. I'm going to go to rendered mode, with my lighting setup already good to go. Now before I get started with this, there's two textures you're going to need, which you might have to find alternatives to. I got these from polygon.com, which I use all the time, recommend you do as well. But the two textures I'm going to be using is wiping residue, which is this one, and I'm also going to be using hand smudges, both basic black and white images of grime and dirt and whatnot. If you can find some free alternatives, then brilliant. If not, get signed up to polygon.com, you won't regret it. Anyway, let's start building our shader. So we're already in rendered mode, we've got our lighting set up, so this should work out quite nicely. Now we're using glass, so you're probably going to be thinking, where is your PBR glass shader built that we can download from your website? Why aren't you using that? Well, there's a very good reason, and that reason is as I've used it more and more, I've decided that it's rubbish. And I'm going to be completely redoing the glass shader for the next release of the PBR pack, but in the meantime we're going to make our own one. So let's add in, starting with a glass shader, the built-in one. It actually works pretty well, I like it, so let's throw that in there. But we are going to change over to multi-scatter GGX. I got some nicer results with that. I think it renders a bit faster. I could be making that up, but anyway. Yes, the multi-scatter GGX glass shader, and that's our basic glass setup and good to go. Now we're going to also add in a transparent shader, a mix shader, and then we're going to need something to control the mix between the glass and the transparent. Now the reason we're doing this, you may already know, but you'll notice that the shadow created by the glass at the moment is very, very strong. I don't know why Cycles does it like this. Perhaps if one of you guys know, you can explain it to me. But it doesn't let light pass through the glass in quite the way it should. And what we're going to basically do is fix that. So if we add in a light path node, and then we need a math node, and then another math node, we're going to change the first one to maximum, and the second one to multiply. I'll explain why in a moment. Now, we're going to connect the shadow ray and reflection rays to this maximum one. What this is then, what that's basically doing is whatever's the highest value at any given point from these two will be used, and then I'm feeding that for a multiply node, because that will give us direct control of the overall input. Like 0 will be nothing, 1 will be maximum. I hope that makes sense. So we'll feed that into the mix shader like so, and now with 0 it's as though we haven't even set this up, and at 1 you can see it's letting all the light through the glass because it's not casting a shadow whatsoever, which we don't want. We're going to want it at about 0.7, which should be a decent amount, I think. Anyway, just to neaten things up, we're going to press Ctrl H on this node, and that will hide all of the unused inputs. So we're just showing the shadow ray and reflection ray. I'm also going to minimize that because we can always open it up if we want to change the value about. Cool. Now, just to keep things neat and tidy, I'm also going to add in a frame. Boom. And we'll call the frame glass shader. Boom. There we go. So we have our basic glass shader, which will be used on both of the materials within this. Okie dokie. Right, let's get to the interesting stuff. So we've got two materials now. For this, I'm actually going to quickly jump back to the default view so we can see what we're doing. Right, So for this, this top one's the outer one, yeah? So I'm going to hit the little 2 button there, which will create a copy basically, and we'll call this one glass outer, and we'll call this one glass inner. Now at the moment these are identical copies of each other, but it allows us to then make different changes to, but we can change them both individually. Yeah, you know what I mean. But quickly, I'm also going to split the area here, go to UV image editor, and we need to unwrap this. So I'm going to hit U and do a cylinder projection. In fact, I'll tell a lie, that's not what I'm going to do. First, however, I'm going to go to box select mode, deselect that bottom one, just select that. I need the base to be separate because it's a flat surface. So unwrap, cylinder projection, and that gives us our UV for the outside of the glass, well, the side of it anyway. Now I'm going to go to inner, select that, do the same thing there, deselect the bottom ones, hit U, cylinder projection, scale that up a bit, over there, and then we just need to do the bases. So I'm going to go like so, and just hit normal unwrap, and then we get that, and then I get that one too, normal unwrap, and if I select it all, we now have all the various parts have been unwrapped nicely. The only thing that probably needs a slight re-unwrapping is that top bit there. Great. So let's go back to our nodes view. Now that we've got nice shiny UVs to work with, what I may need to do is, actually I can always work on it from here. That'll work quite nicely, won't it? But I won't be able to see the UV. Oh, I don't know, we'll work it out as we go. So the first layer we're going to work on is the inner one. That's not going to have any hand smears on it for obvious reasons. Unless you've got really small hands, you're not going to be able to get it in there. So it's just going to be the wiping residue, as though someone's got like one of those cleaning things and shoved it down there to give it a clean. But obviously not too well, because they've left a residue. So let's add in an image texture. And we'll find our wiping residue texture. There we go. Now, if I hit Shift Control and click on this, it will, well, if you've got Node Wrangler enabled, it will connect it to a emission shader quickly, just so you can see what you're doing. Now, because our outer glass is still just normal glass, that's why it's got the reflections. So, just temporarily, I'm going to cut that line. In fact, I'll feed the transparent shader into it. So the outer layer is now invisible. So we're just working on the inner layer. And with this viewer connected, it allows us to see it as an emission shader and see what we're doing. So what we want to do is exaggerate this effect a little bit. I actually like the UV mappings worked pretty well, so I'm not gonna mess with it in this instance. So I'm just going to add in a color ramp, like so. Drag this white value down because we want the white areas will basically be the smears, the roughness. It's going to affect the roughness of the glass shader. So we want that to be really rough, so it really shows up nice. And I'm just going to slightly edge the black value because we do want some of the glass to be just normal glass. And if you look closely, with the black value all the way down there, even these little grey values are going to appear quite rough. So let's just affect that a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to feed that bad boy into the roughness of the glass, reconnect the shader, jump to, there we go, there we go. Now because it's just a single layer of glass, it's hard to get the effect we're after, so I'm going to reconnect to the outer shader. There we go, and it starts to make a bit more sense. I also want to increase the amount of samples in the preview so we can see what we're doing a bit better. Yeah, that is looking nice. I like that. I think that's pretty much all we need to do with the inside. You could play with these values a little more. Like if I, just while we're here, if I put that up, you'll notice the inside glass gets a lot cleaner, and the more I bring that down, the more grimy and dirty it gets. That's a little bit too grimy, but you can do it during the live render to tweak it as needed. So now we've got that layer done. I'm going to actually copy, just highlight the nodes and hit Control C, because I do want them in our outer shader, like so. So let's just connect the roughness up like that, and that's basically doing the exact same thing again over the top. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to the inner part of the shade, the inner part for a moment, and disconnect the roughness, just so we're looking at the outer roughness now. And I want to lighten this up. I don't want it as bad. Now, because we moved the UVs to a different area, it's not duplicating the layout of this roughness. Make sure you avoid that mistake, otherwise it will look a bit weird. I just want a subtle effect here. Yeah. So let's go back to the inner one now and reconnect that. Yes, starting to look nice and dirty. But what we do need to do on the outer one now is add in our handprint smudges. So another image texture, hand smudges, and let's connect that to an emission shader so we can see where they are. Ugh, that looks awful. What I might actually do with the hand smudges, rather than use a UV, is let's try generated coordinates. Change that to box mode and blend it up a bit. Yeah, maybe. Have to fix the scaling a bit. Oh, that looks awful, doesn't it? No, we don't like. Okay, so we are going to have to use the UVs, but it means we're going to have to affect them a little bit. So, change that back to flat. Go to 3D view. We just want the outer part selected. It's the only UVs we want to play with. Awesome. And then I go to the UV image editor. We should just have those selected. Yeah, we do. So now let's try playing with this a little bit until we get something we like. I was using that really, wasn't it? There we go. So yeah, there we go. That all about work, I think. Let me just make sure that we've not screwed up this though in the process. No, that still works. That still works. Good. So we're going to need a separate color ramp for our hand smudges, and I'm also going to get a math node, and we're going to I think we use maximum again because we don't want to go over 1, do we? So let's use the maximum value of these and see where we get. So as I sorry, moving in my chair a little bit there. As I bring this one down, it will make the hand smudges more obvious, which is what we want, because they're going to show up the most on this outer layer. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then we'll be feeding that into the roughness. And then when we reconnect the shader, you should see the handprints come up nicely, which we do. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that a lot. Okay, so we're almost done. Basically now we're going to put in some liquid into the flask, and we will call that a day. So I'm going to jump back to the default view, highlight layer 2 for a second, And we're just going to concentrate on layer 2. Now, because we copied this from the interior of the, or the inside part of the flask, the faces are reversed to what we want now. So let's select all of them, go to shading and UVs and recalculate, and that will flip the UVs for us. And then what we need to do is select this top loop of vertices, extrude with E, scale to 0. Ooh, still got it on 3D cursor, make sure that goes back to medium point, and then scale to 0. And then add in some extra loops, like so. And I'm also going to add in one extra one there. And no. Select them all except that last one. Oi! Thank you. Just move that up a little bit, because that's the way liquid actually tends to work. I don't know why. I'm not a physicist, but it does. I might actually scale them out a bit. Yeah, nice. Now, one thing we definitely don't need on the liquid is the edge split, but we are going to keep the subsurface. In fact, we're going to up the subsurface to 4, at least in the render. Now, we're going to select the top lines again, minus that outer edge, and I'm going to go to vertex group and assign it to this, to give it this vertex group, which I will call liquid displace. But no, let's keep that naming consistent. Boiling flask liquid displace, like so. And now if I hit select, I didn't assign it properly, did I? Idiot. Assign. So now if I hit select, good, the vertices are here. You can also check that you've done it right by going to weight paint mode, and basically what it's done is assign a weighting based on that vertex group. So that's worked nicely. We're going to add in another modifier, a displacement modifier. Now here you could use all sorts of different effects. Now the one I'm going to do is a really basic one, which I'll demonstrate now with a I don't know, cloud texture. Yeah, okay. Not like that though, that looks awful. But yeah, you get the idea. So let's go 0.002, and then we'll just affect the scaling of the texture to, I don't know, 0.01, just to break up the liquid a little bit. Slightly increase the strength. Yeah. Now, depending on what you're doing, you could do all sorts of things here. You could find a nice normal map of some ripples. I know Gleb Alexandrov has a tutorial somewhere on how to make those. If you were doing liquid that was being dripped into, there's all sorts. Whatever. If you were stirring it, you could create kind of a whirlpool effect. Whatever you need. But this gives you the basic framework for doing it. Just make sure you do assign the vertex group, because the water that's touching the glass should be nice and flat. You just want the open top bit to be the bit that gets the displacement. So now that's been done, I'll move it over to layer 2 to join our flask. Go back to nodes view and see where we're at. Cool. So at the moment it's kind of got clay in there, hasn't it? Which isn't isn't quite what we need. So let's select our liquid again, and I'm actually going to take the glass because it's a good starting point for our liquid. Hit 2 again because we're creating another copy of it, and we'll call this boiling flask liquid. Ooh. Like so. Whatever. You can spell it right on your own time. We don't need the roughness textures at all, so we're going to get rid of those. Now my OCD is annoying me. It must have L. Thank you. And then what we can do is just affect the colour of the glass shader, and that'll give us our liquid. So let's go with what I did in mine, which is kind of a greenish blue. Yeah, we'll go with that. That looks nice, doesn't it? And I'm going to change the index refraction up a little bit, like so, and also the amount of this shadow fix, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to lower to 0.4. Excellent. Now I'll run a render because it is hard to tell exactly what's going on from a preview render like this. So I'll pause the recording and we'll see what the end result looks like. Okay, so we have our finished render. Looks pretty good. There's a few things I would obviously change. The sharpening we put in at the base of the neck there. The angle of it is triggering the edge split modifier. So I'd fix that, and I think the proportions might be slightly off. I might change the UVs a little bit to affect the roughness textures, but overall you get the idea. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I will be back hopefully more often now that I'm doing these smaller, more focused tutorials. I'm hoping to get at least a couple done a month, but we'll see how it goes. Until next time, guys, bye for now.